News Channel 8 presents New Skills for Living with your host, Tom Lavin, a healthy plan for healthy living.
Hello and welcome to New Skills for Living, a show dedicated to healing and wholeness in our community. If you are interested in quality education here in Northern Nevada, you'll want to watch our show today. Today we are exploring a wide range of important topics surrounding the public school system here in Washoe County. Topics ranging from improving student achievement to improving the physical environment. Our guest is Dr. Heath Morrison, the Superintendent of Schools in Washoe County, a position he has held since August 1st. Before that, he was a community superintendent in the Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland. He is also a recent graduate of the Broad Superintendent's Academy, and he has served as a middle and high school principal. Dr. Morrison, it's so good to have you here with us.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And I think one of the things to really begin with is that you've repeatedly said that Washoe County School District could be one of the premier large districts in the United States. Now that's a very bold statement, that we can be one of the premier school districts. Can you please explain to us your level of confidence and your vision for that for our community?
Well, absolutely. What I've said repeatedly is when people ask, well, why did you want to come be the superintendent in Washoe County School District? And I, as you said, had a great job in Montgomery County Public Schools, doing really good work, very happy, and was very fortunate to be getting a number of phone calls and requests to at least consider being a superintendent in different districts across the country. I've always said I didn't want to just go be a superintendent. I wanted to go be the superintendent of a school district that was really serious about challenging the status quo, about setting a vision for high expectations for learning for all children, and to really get all students to graduate college and career ready. And so when I got contacted about this job and I began to look into this district, there were just a number of factors that I believe that we can just really ratchet up and take to scale. And so it begins with a board of trustees, our primary governance structure, 7 individuals who really care about students deeply and are really committed to reform and to challenging the status quo. Because the reality is, in public education across the country, we've got some very good school districts, but I'm not sure we've had a large, great school district for a substantive amount of time. And I think a lot of times it's because we only look to education for the answers. And so we have a chance here in Washoe County to look at other successful organizations, other different ways of doing things than we've always done in education. And so that starts off with this board of trustees. Looking at the community, the business community, our political structures, the community itself, our parents, our taxpayers. I think there's a great desire to see change, to see a better educational product. And so those are things that were very exciting to me. And so I'm just thrilled to be here. And I really believe that in a very short period of time, by better aligning our school district, by increasing accountability, and by really making ourselves more accessible to our public, we're going to get student achievement like we've never had before and really be setting the bar for many school districts across the country.
That's great. That's great. It's really great to hear you share your vision and also to listen to your enthusiasm for creating that vision in our community. That's great. Now, there was a report that came out in 2009. That was the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that took a look at youth suicide and substance abuse and other problems. And at that time, you referred to that as a call to action for our community. Can you tell us how that has evolved and kind of what's going on with our community's response to that?
Absolutely. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey is given to students all across Nevada. And so when we started to look at the data for the students here in Washoe County, there was a very courageous conversation, I think, about, well, what do we do with this data? And, you know, the data is alarming. The data, and we've made this survey available on our website, shows that over half of the students say that they have engaged in sexual activity. Over half say that they have thought about or are currently using marijuana. Over 10 to 11% of students say that they've had thoughts of suicide. And so as we looked at those data, we decided that we needed to make it public, that we needed to be very proactive in getting that information out because, you know, as a parent, I'm a parent myself in the school district, you hear about those kind of data and you think, you know, it must be somebody else's kids. Well, that's too many kids for people not to understand how serious this is. And, the part about should we release the data, because, when it comes to math data or literacy data or writing data, we own those data as a school district. I think there's a fair question of how much of those data do we own. But those data hugely impact how we educate our children. When kids come to school and they are engaged in sexual activity and getting pregnant, they're more likely to drop out. As kids are doing drugs, we know that they're not mentally focused and engaged in their work. So we wanted to engage the entire community, our parents to make them aware of this issue, our health and human service agencies, folks like the Children's Cabinet. So many people respond to this call of action because I always say that cliche, it takes a village to educate a child. We need the whole village to come together to make sure that we have kids coming to school ready to learn, ready to be educated, and we have to address the issues in this survey.
Again, it's really great to hear your enthusiasm and your vision for what we can be doing here with our schools. And right after this brief break, we're going to continue to talk with Dr. Morrison. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. Hello, and welcome back to New Skills for Living. We're talking with Dr. Heath Morrison, the superintendent of the Washoe County Schools. And one of the things Dr. Morrison was talking with us about was the 2009 Youth Risk Behaviors Survey and the call to action. And I really wanted to give you a chance to tell us more about how has our community responded to that call to action, Heath?
It's been phenomenal, and again, I think that's why I'm so encouraged about what we can do here in Washoe County. We have all of the social service agencies came to that news conference. We've been having meetings about what we can do together. This budget is challenging everybody, so it's never been a better time to try to collaborate and work together. And so I can tell you I serve proudly on the Board of Trustees for the Children's Cabinet. The next meeting we had, even though there was a packed agenda, everybody stopped to say, okay, let's talk about this survey and what it means and what we can do together. And so it's been just tremendously refreshing to see that kind of how we can, not why we can attitude with the community.
Yeah, because as you were describing earlier, the data that shows the high number of our children that are contemplating suicide, or they've used drugs, or they've been involved in sexual behavior. I mean, those are things that we want to offer that kind of support to our children, don't we?
It's critical. I mean, again, we have the responsibility to educate every child, but how they come to school ready to learn has a huge impact in terms of how far we can take their educational programs. So it is just hugely important to involve the entire community, and the data is disturbing. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. The data really are disturbing.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're going to do something about it.
We are.
All right, great. Recently, you celebrated your 100 days on the job here at Washoe County.
Yeah.
We're glad that you did, and we want you to have another several thousand more.
All right.
You held a news conference at Sierra Vista Elementary School. Why did you choose that particular school?
It was very intentional. The reason was because I think it's really important for us to have a vision of educating all children. And the reality is sometimes people will look at a school like Sierra Vista and say, well, they have a lot of kids impacted by poverty, a lot of kids impacted by mobility, a lot of kids impacted by English as a second language, a lot of minority students, and have low expectations for that school. And we don't want to do that. We want a vision of excellence for all kids, setting a very, very high bar and closing and eliminating achievement gaps for all students. And a lot of great things are happening at Sierra Vista. There is just great data that shows that all students are making gains. They are closing and eliminating the achievement gap there. And so I really wanted to celebrate the success of that school, those students, the community, and really use that as a vehicle to start talking about the reforms that we're going to be very aggressive in Washoe County School District.
Yeah, well, that was a wonderful way to celebrate your first 100 days.
It was phenomenal.
In a great venue.
Yes.
The school district is starting a very ambitious project to completely revamp its strategic plan. We've got about a minute and a half here, which is not a lot of time to talk about a strategic plan. But what can you share with us as some of the potential outcomes?
Well, with the strategic plan, our goal is to figure out how we are going to enact our vision. And our vision is to have every single student in Washoe County walk across the stage, get a diploma, not that it's going to look nice in a den, but it's going to be a passport to whatever it is they want to do. 4-year college, 2-year college, military, highly skilled career. And so that's the end goal. So the strategic plan is going to be the document that is the roadmap to tell us how we're going to get there. what we need to do, how we're going to budget to make sure that we're using our resources effectively. And we're going to get a lot of community involvement. We're going to get a lot of stakeholder involvement. We're going to have principals, teachers, business leaders, community leaders, parents all involved actively in creating this strategic plan. We're really excited about it.
Well, it is really good, and I've heard you mention this several times. You keep kind of like the school system is not an island unto itself. It's very much a part of the community, and I hear you talking about engaging all the different members and aspects of the community. And we want to, after this brief break, we want to continue to talk more with Dr. Morrison about this. Welcome back to New Skills for Living. We're talking with Washoe County School Superintendent Heath Morrison. Heath, can you tell us more about the strategic plan? We're all very interested in this because it is the embodiment of the vision of our schools for the future.
Absolutely. Our strategic plan is going to really focus on areas of building our academic achievement for all of our students, building human capital, building community partnerships and engagement, and continuous improvement. And so we have committees right now that are actually, many of them met tonight. They're led by principals, central office staff. Again, they have lots of different stakeholders, parents, community members, and they're going to focus on areas like our curriculum, our instructional program, instructional practices, how we hire and support and train our principals, our teachers, our support staff, how we link and engage with the community, how we get more parent involvement. We're going to engage in a theory of action called performance management that's really going to drive our targets and our goals so that people know this is what we want to do, this is what we're going to be accountable for. We want system dashboards and scorecards for every single one of our schools so that people can see, this is what they said they were going to do, how are they doing. If we're doing well, you're going to be able to instantly on these dashboards see how we're doing it. If we're not meeting our targets, and you're going to see what we're doing in reaction to that. So it's very aggressive, it's very reform-minded, but we think we know it's going to end up as a better school district.
Yeah, I keep hearing you kind of even implicitly mentioning these themes of responsibility and accountability.
Absolutely.
And that can be so important. Now, moving from the strategic plan, of course, something that's going to impact that is the legislature and the governor and what's going to happen with some cuts that may occur with schools in the school district. What are your thoughts about that? Do you have any ideas about what can be cut or what might be cut? Or please share your ideas with us.
Well, I think the difficult thing is, I'll go out into the community. I had a brown bag lunch today, and a lot of people come to talk about education, and people always want to know, well, what are you going to cut? And right now, we don't have any idea of the level of funding restrictions, reductions we might be asked to take. We hear that there's going to be a special session, and that could happen sometime in February or March. We're having lots of conversations with people. We're trying to stay proactively engaged in that conversation. And, once we find out that this is the number, then we will approach it by asking what's best for teaching and learning, what's best for kids. And so, at first blush, I would say that we would look at trying to make cuts as far away from the classroom as possible. But when you start looking at percentages such as 8 to 10%, when 90% of your budget are people, it's hard to avoid cuts to people. And so we're trying to do everything we can to protect our employees so that they're in our schools doing great things for our kids. But again, it's just hard to say what we would do or what kind of cuts we would make without knowing the magnitude of cuts we might be asked to make.
If we switch gears for a minute, we start talking about facilities, okay?
Right.
There are still a great deal of inequities between the newer and the older schools. A funding mechanism the district has had since 2002 to address this issue is the rollover bond program, which expires in 2012.
Right.
Your Board of Trustees has voted to put a question to renew it before the voters in the 2010 ballot. What are your thoughts about that, Heath?
Well, it's absolutely critical. We have one way to fund any kind of improvements in our facilities, and that's through this rollover bond. And we have schools that are old. We've taken wonderful care of them, but they're 60 years old. And so there are huge needs that they have infrastructure, classroom improvements, technology improvements, so that we can bring them up to an equitable level with some of our newer facilities. So we have a great opportunity right now because we're not experiencing an enrollment increase, which has been something that Washoe County's had to grapple with over the last 5 to 10 years. So we're not needing to build new schools, so we can shift our attention to these older schools. And so we have an opportunity to put more technology, to put some things that are going to increase the educational environment that we know will have a positive impact on kids. The great thing for our taxpayers is that this is not a new tax. It's a continuation of a tax that's already on the books. And so I think it's a great time to show people that there's a huge need. It is an opportunity to bring the level of equity with our older buildings up to our newer buildings. And we've got a lot of data, and it's available on our website to show that we've done a good job of using taxpayer dollars to be very aggressive in creating world-class facilities for our kids.
Oh, that's good. That's very good to hear that. Now, in this, again, a minute's not a lot of time, but could you address how you reorganize central services and what impact that has had?
Absolutely. When I first came on board, I was able to get at a major educational organization to do an audit of our organizational structure, and it didn't cost the Washoe County School District any money. It got them to pay for it. This organization, they came in and they did an aggressive audit about our organizational structure, and they made some very, very important recommendations. Again, that made that available on our website. Things such as that we didn't have a chief academic officer, so we're a teaching and learning organization, but we didn't have anybody that was identifiable that was leading our instructional programs and improvement with curriculum. So,
Heath, can I, if you don't mind, if I could interrupt you, we want to take a break, but we want to get back and hear more about this.
Great.
And so right after this brief break, we'll hear more from Dr. Morrison. Hello and welcome back to New Skills for Living. We're talking with Dr. Heath Morrison, and he was just mentioning to us, and I hope you would follow up with this in terms of the changes, some of the changes that you have made. Please continue.
Well, I was sharing that, we identified the fact that we're a teaching and learning organization, and we didn't have a person who in the organizational structure you could point to as a single point of contact and say that's the person who's leading our curriculum improvements and instructional practices. So we were able to rearrange our current positions. We were very, very conscious about costs, and so we wanted to make sure that we stayed within budget, and we had some positions that we hadn't filled, so we restructured. And the primary reason I did it was because most school districts across the country, when you look at their organizational structure, they're organized around compliance and around relationships. And I really felt it was important for us to be organized around collaboration but performance. And so as we reorganize, it's about creating a more accountable school district, a school district that is committed to better results and is going to be held very, very accountable for those things. So I think we're off to a great start, and that's going to be important as we engage in our reforms.
Yeah, that sounds like a really important change that you've made. One of the things that so many of us are interested in, we've heard about Race to the Top.
Yes.
How is that impacting our school district at this time?
Well, Race to the Top is a federal program that's been put out. It's about $4.1 billion that have been earmarked for educational reform. But when I say it's earmarked for educational reform, you have to commit to really challenging the status quo. So it's things that we're very interested in. Now, unfortunately, to make sure that these monies are used for reform, there are conditions that have been put out to the states that before you can even apply for it, you have to have certain conditions. And one of the conditions has been a provision that says you cannot prohibit through law teacher evaluations involving student performance. And right now, currently, Nevada has a law there you can't use student performance on teacher evaluations. So probably through a special session that's going to come up. And if that law changes, then we're going to be eligible to apply for those monies, and Washoe County School District is going to take a lead along with Clark County and the State Department of Education to go after those monies, not only for kids in our school district, but for students all across the state of Nevada.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
Of course, one of the things that I'm sure as you looked at coming to Washoe County and as you've been here, how we're doing with graduation rates. I'm sure that's preeminent. In terms of your vision and your goals. Can you share with us about that?
Well, what I always say about graduation rates is that, the end goal for education is to get a student to walk across the stage, get a diploma, and have that diploma be something that's very, very meaningful. It's going to give them an opportunity to do the things they want to do in life. And so I think in many ways it's the most important metric of a school district. Right now, our graduation rate in Washoe County School District is 55%. Now that is for students who enter ninth grade, walk across stage, get a diploma by the end of their 12th grade year in 4 years. And so 55%, I could be very political and say, well, that's better than the state average in Nevada, and that's true. I could say it's better than most large school districts in the country, and that's true. And I could say it's better than Washington, D.C.'s 12%, which is very true. But that just makes us a very tall tree in a short forest. 55% is not anything we can be excited about. That means we have a huge number of kids who are not graduating. And so our reforms, all of our improvement efforts have got to be geared towards getting kids to graduate, because we know that's critically important. And it's a target that just has to move, and it's going to move.
Well, I think I'd like to give you kind of like an open minute right now. You know, our viewing audience out there. Hopefully there are some students and some, as well as some parents watching us. In about a minute or so, Heath, what is the most important thing that you'd like to share with them about Washoe County School District and the vision and the energy around our educational experience here, now, and in the future?
Well, what we want to try to get done here in Washoe County School District is to see what's worked, and to make sure that as we engage in our reforms, that we engage in change, that we're going to do it right. And so that means that as we engage in these reforms, we're going to have a outstanding principal leading every single one of our schools, that we're going to have highly effective teachers and staff in our classrooms educating our children, that there's going to be a sincere commitment to engaging and involving our parents in the education of our children, and that at the end of the day, it's all about accountability and achievement and results.
Great.
I was at IB graduation program last night at Worcester High School. That's what we want to see for all kids. So we're committed to it. We're going to get it done, and I'm excited as I could be to be here.
That is excellent, Heath. Thank you very much for sharing. It's been great to have Dr. Morrison with us. We're going to continue to talk with representatives of the Washoe County School District to take a look at our school system and how it's evolving. And we very much, you saw that there was the website that was available. We want you to contact the school district, talk with Dr. Morrison, talk with teachers, administrators, and educators. We want to thank you for joining us, and we wish you a good life. We hope that you're doing well in your life. And again, we want to thank Dr. Morrison. We're very glad that he's part of our community now.